Hey, this is Jonathan Brubaker. I am the broker of Edgewater Realty. I'm here to teach the first-time homebuyer class that I put together. So this class is, as it sounds, geared towards people who are buying a home for the first time. But I'd also say that even if you've purchased a home before and you're looking to do it again, this class is valuable because it will kind of remind you of the steps involved in the process and just basically help you go from beginning to end. So my goal is all the way from pre-approval until funding. So, all right, let's begin. So I've broken this class down into four major sections: money, 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 finding the perfect home, making the offer, and from contract to close. Those are kind of the four main stages of purchasing a home. So we'll start with money, money, money. How much house can I afford? The very first thing you should do when considering purchasing a home is determining how much house you can afford. To do this, you need to find out how much money a mortgage lender would be willing to lend you on your purchase. This is called getting pre-approved or pre-qualified. So I'm going to stop here. Before you ever go to look at a house in person, get pre-approved. Now, that doesn't mean you can't browse on the internet. I'm talking about scheduling private showings. And the main reason I say that is, well, there's kind of two main reasons, three really. Number one, we don't want to go bother a homeowner by showing their home, asking them to leave their home so you can go take a look if you're not necessarily sure whether you can afford this home or not. So that'd be the first thing. Secondly, I don't want you to show up at a home, view it, love it, and then come to find out in the process of you getting pre-approved after you saw it, somebody else put in an offer and it got accepted. I mean, normally pre-approval is pretty quick, but in the event that it's not, I wouldn't want you to be in that position and be disappointed. And then lastly, I wouldn't want you to show up to a house, fall in love with it, and then find out you couldn't actually afford it to begin with because you couldn't get pre-approved for it. So this is always where we start. So pre-approval includes how much liquid cash do you have to use for a down payment and closing costs? What is your credit score? What is your current income? What debt do you have? So a loan officer will review this information and provide you with a maximum purchase amount and a maximum loan amount. And as I said earlier, you should shop at or below this range. You need enough cash to cover the following. So number one, down payment. That can be anywhere between 0% to 20%, depending on your loan. And for the purpose of this class, I'm not going to get into all the different loan types. But I will say many first-time home buyers can pay as low as 3.5%. The 0% loans are VA loans. Certain people can qualify for. Again, I'm not going to get into all that, but I'd be happy to talk with you about what type of loan might be best for you. So then you have your upfront costs. These are costs you pay before you close. For example, earnest money, which is generally 1%, option money, which is generally $100 to $200, inspections, again, $500 to $1,000, depending on what all you have inspected. The appraisal, which is $500 to $600. And so the earnest money, option money, and appraisal count towards your closing costs, but any inspection costs do not. So to be super clear, the upfront costs, I've kind of broken them down separately here, but those are really a part of your closing costs. They're just paid beforehand. So they're paid basically when you get a contract, and then the rest of the closing costs you'll pay at closing. But again, that does not include your inspection. And then closing costs are costs you pay at closing to obtain your loan and include loan origination fees, application fees, loan doc fees, title company fees, prepaids, which is your insurance and taxes, government fees, etc. So these costs typically range between 2% and 4%. You can also ask the seller to pay all or some of your closing costs, which will reduce this amount. This is negotiable. So I would not assume a seller would be willing to do that, just to be clear, but it is a part of negotiating. So to enable you to bring less money to close, you can ask them to pay a portion of that. So lastly, at the bottom, in big bold letters. These numbers are estimates. It's important to discuss loan-related costs with your loan officer. So I'm trying to help give you a ballpark idea, but you need to discuss those costs with your loan officer. So for example, if you are purchasing a $200,000 home with a 3.5% down payment, you should prepare conservatively to have about $16,000 to cover your down payment, upfront costs, which again is part of your closing costs for the most part, except for the inspection, and closing costs. So 3.5% down payment is $7,000. Upfront costs, i.e. inspection. So in this example, I'm actually only putting the inspection in the upfront cost because again, I'm including those other costs in your closing costs, the appraisal, earnest money, all that good stuff. So $1,000, I'm estimating $1,000 for the inspection. That's if you have multiple inspections done. A general inspection is less than that. But then 4% closing costs, in this case, that's $8,000. So that's how we came out to $16,000. So I bring this up because a lot of people will say sometimes, oh, well, we want to buy this house. We're going to put 3.5% down, and then that's all they budget for. And they don't count the closing costs, which in this case could be more than the down payment and some of the other costs involved. So I just want you to be aware of what it takes. And again, these numbers are estimates. I'm shooting high. It's important to discuss loan-related costs with your loan officer. All right, Chapter 2, finding the perfect home. So how do I find the perfect home? I probably do not need to tell you how to search for a home. However, I do need to tell you about the best way to search for a home. That's if you're in the Houston metro area. So if you're not, this won't necessarily apply to you, but majority of my clients are going to be in the Houston metro area. So we have har.com, and this particular image is of the exclusive consumer app. That's a real Q link, actually. You might be able to even scan that with your phone while you're watching this, but I can send you this app if you would like to look at it. So why har.com? So har.com is the source for all residential homes available for sale by listing brokers, and it is the most up-to-date resource. Again, that's in the Houston area. So Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, etc., they are all secondary sources that receive their information through a feed from har.com, meaning that they are not always up to date. So for example, I've had calls before, from people who've said, hey, I see this house on Zillow, 1234 Main Street, can we take a look at that house? And I'll say, I'm sorry, prospective buyer, that house actually closed 2 weeks ago. And I'm not saying this to criticize Zillow. That's not the point. The point is the source is har.com. And if there's any kind of issue with the feed, which can happen sometimes with technology, things might not always be up to date. Whereas with har.com, as soon as a house goes under contract or closes, within an hour generally on the website, you will see that status change. So it's just very up to date, and all brokers in the Houston metro who are a part of HAR are sharing that data. So, all right, so there's two ways to search using har.com. I alluded to the second one already, but let me start with the desktop portal. This is also referred to as Matrix. So this is used to set up specific search criteria that will email directly to you whenever it hits the market. So the desktop portal I love because it is very thorough. You can get really detailed about what you're looking for. You can even draw areas on the map that you're looking at, and then it'll send an auto email as soon as something hits the market. Or if you just want to receive them daily or once a week, you can kind of set up the frequency. And then secondly, the exclusive consumer app. This is just a more mobile, it's more mobile friendly than the desktop portal. So if you're going to be doing a lot of searching on your phone, I recommend the app. You could use the portal on your phone. It's just not as mobile friendly. But if you like to do it on your computer, then I recommend using the desktop portal. And you can do both. You can switch between the two. it's going to show you the same exact data. So I want to be super clear about that. These aren't like two different places to look for homes. This is one place to look for homes, but two different ways. So setting up the search. So again, I cannot tell you what you want, but I can certainly help you find it. So I use the following search criteria to get you started. Excuse me. So first of all, location. That is probably the #1 thing that people are looking at when they are searching for a home. So the main ways that I will search and that people like to search are either by city, by zip code, by specific neighborhood, by school district. And then you can choose multiple. If you're interested in multiple cities, potentially multiple zip codes, we can set all of that up. Next is going to be the size. You know, the square footage, the number of bedrooms, the number of bathrooms, the number of garage spaces, how many stories. Some people only want 2 stories. Some people only want 1 story. The lot size. Are you looking for a larger lot, or are you okay with whatever lot size? So we can get specific about that. Year built. Some people prefer older homes because of the character. Some people prefer newer homes because of the upgrades and the energy efficiency. But then some people prefer older homes that have been updated, right? So we can search by that. Additional features, so if you want a pool, a fireplace, certain water features, like if you want to be on the water, whether that's with a boat dock or something that's just on like a retention pond just for the view. Those are all criteria we can use. I will say I try not to get too specific, just in the event that something is marked incorrectly and then you end up overlooking it. So now if a pool is a deal breaker, then I'm definitely going to put in there, you know, that it needs a pool. But if it's not, you know, I would just avoid doing that in the search. Okay, viewing the home. So as you narrow down the homes that you're interested in, I will schedule private showings for you to view the homes until you've found the one you want to make an offer on. Which leads us to the next section, making the offer. So how much should I offer? That's a great question. In order to make the best offer, you need to consider a number of items, such as what have similar houses in similar conditions sold for? How motivated is the seller? How competitive is the market? How long has it been on the market? How motivated is the buyer? That's you. And what are some immediate items I want to address before moving in? Cleaning, replacing flooring, painting, etc. So let's go back to the top there. So what have similar houses in similar conditions sold for? So the way we determine that is using what's called a CMA, a comparative market analysis. And that is something that I run, basically looking at similar homes in the area. And when I say similar, I'm talking age, square footage, number of bedrooms and bathrooms, lot size can be included in that, whether or not it had a pool, if it's been upgraded or not. So we just want to make sure that you're offering kind of in that range. You know, if houses are selling for $150 and this one they're asking $175 for, and there's no noticeable reason, like it's not any different than the ones that are selling for $150, then we want to take that into consideration. How motivated is the seller? So to be clear, we will not always know this. The seller will not always reveal their motivation, and they're not required to. So I put this in there, but it may not apply to all situations. How competitive is the market? So usually, so actually really the next 2 questions, how competitive, and then how long has it been on the market? Those kind of generally walk hand in hand. So if houses are only staying on the market for like less than a week, that's a really hot market. That means you're probably going to have to offer close to what they're asking, because you might be competing with other people. But if a house has been on the market for 90 days or longer, there might be a little bit more motivation. Now, we can't assume that, because there are cases where a house will sit not because it's not priced well, but just because the particular home has a very specific pool of buyers that it's looking for. And those buyers may not be in the market at the time that the house is listed. So these are general tools, but we don't assume. How motivated is the buyer? So Again, that's you. So here's what I mean by that. Are you in a lease that's coming up and you have to be in a home by like tomorrow, then you're not in a great negotiating position. This is why, just so we're clear, when you're getting ready to start thinking about purchasing, you should call me so we can talk about timeline. Because I don't want you to get to a point where you've waited and now you have to get something and you are a motivated buyer. So, yeah, and that's probably the main motivation there, is if you're in a lease, or maybe you're selling your current home. Again, if you're a first-time buyer, that's not the case, but for other buyers, that might be the case. So, and then immediate items you need to or want to address. Now, you just got to take this with a grain of salt. Just because a kitchen needs to be updated and it'll cost $10,000 to do it, doesn't mean the seller is required to lower their price by $10,000 to let you do that. Now they might, and it is, if it's a deal breaker, something you want to consider, but it's not a straight exchange like that. Yeah, I put cleaning in there. I mean, generally I would say you should clean any house you buy, but what level of cleaning? If something's been vacant for a long time, you might just consider, hey, this might cost a little bit more. So those are just things you want to take into consideration. All right, it is important that you have a knowledgeable, competent, and experienced agent throughout this whole process, but especially when it comes time to making an offer and moving the contract to closing. Not only do you need someone to help you with pricing and strategy, but also someone to make sure the offer is written correctly, the right documents are used, and all deadlines are met. So let's be clear. Up to this point, you could have done most of these things on your own without the help of an agent. So you can search for a home yourself. You could contact a loan officer yourself and get pre-approved. You could even probably go and see a number of homes, mainly open houses. You're not really going to be able to do private showings without the help of an agent, but you could go go to open houses, for example. Really, the value of hiring an agent or a broker such as myself is this: when it comes time to making the offer and bringing you from offer to close. I've done this countless times, over 100, and I know how to navigate the process in a way that will help everyone stay calm and get you from A to Z without a bunch of headaches. So as much as I can control, let me be clear, because there are things outside of my control as well at times too. But again, another reason you need an agent, because I've experienced a lot of those things before. And if this is your first time, you need someone who's going to be able to help you through that. All right. So finally, from contract to close, I have a signed contract. Now what? Meet your deadlines. This is extremely important. Time is of the essence in a real estate contract. Make sure you complete the following items on time. Number one, pay the earnest money to the title company and pay the option fee to the seller. So, yeah, you just need to do that. It's in the contract. It tells you how many days you have to do those. And if you don't follow the written language of the contract, you could be in breach, and there could be consequences for that. So you just need to do that up front. Again, if you hire me, I will make sure that gets done quickly. You need to hire the inspector. I'd say like right as you get a contract, try to get the inspector in as soon as you can, and then send over any amendments with enough time to negotiate prior to the end of the option period. That's why you need to hire the inspector right away, so you have time if there is anything that comes up during the inspection. So what is the option period? I alluded to that, the option money. I've mentioned it a few times now. The option period is a negotiated period of time at the beginning of at the beginning of an executed contract that allows you to back out of the contract for any reason and get your earnest money back. Some examples include the inspection shows too many repairs are needed and the seller is unwilling to address them. The insurance cost is higher than you expected. You got cold feet. Any other reason. It is your option. So you are paying the seller essentially for 7 days, 10 days, 14 days. anywhere in between, it's negotiated, and the amount you pay is negotiated. It's usually around $100 to $200. So this gives you the option to back out. And you don't even have to give a reason. You have to sign the correct paperwork, but you don't have to say why. And to be clear, this is your option as the buyer. The seller does not have an option. So if you're under contract and in those first 10 days, you know, you do all this, that, and the other, and if the seller gets cold feet, that's too bad. But if you as the buyer get cold feet or have any other reason, you can back out of the contract without penalty, aside from paying that option fee, but you'd get your earnest money back and you'd move along. All right, after the option period, the contract moves to pending. This is the period, usually 20 to 35 days, again, we're ballparking here, prior to closing. During this time, the following items will take place: the appraisal, the survey, the borrower final loan approval, the seller will complete any negotiated repairs, and you'll want to make sure insurance and the home warranty is ordered. If you're getting a home warranty, insurance you definitely are getting. You need to have insurance. So the appraisal is essentially an opinion of value by an appraiser. They are seen as objective by the bank or the lender, and that is the number they use to determine loan to value. So if you're buying a house for $200,000, the house just needs to appraise for $200,000 or more for the bank to commit to give you the terms that they agreed to give you. If it comes in less, then they will not be able to lend you as much. That's one of those situations we'll talk about in a minute that is just something you need to navigate if it comes up. It doesn't happen often, but it could. The survey, that's just basically where the house sits on the plat of land. But you know, a lender's going to require that because they just want to make sure that the house is sitting where it should be. It's not crossing any boundaries, those kind of things. Borrower final loan approval. So we talked about pre-approval. Now you need to get final loan approval. So just they'll do all their verification, employment verification, credit scores, assets, income, all that good stuff. Negotiated repairs, we talked about that, and then insurance and home warranty we talked about. Last week before closing. So when you are about a week from closing, most everything from the previous list should be completed. At this point, you will schedule a time to sign, review a final closing disclosure, schedule and attend a final walkthrough of the property. I'll get to that in a second. Schedule your utilities to be turned on, usually everything except for water. Oftentimes they require a signed closing statement for you to get your water turned on, but you can schedule your electric and gas, and then schedule your movers. In fact, depending on the circumstances or situation, you might even want to do that before, about a week before, if you're planning to move right away. So let's talk about the final walkthrough. So the main purpose of a final walkthrough, and I like to do them either the day of closing, like the morning of, or the night before, if the day before, or if the day of is, like if we're closing first thing, for example. You mainly want to do this, first of all, if there were negotiated repairs, you want to do this to make sure those were completed. Although it's a good idea to get proof of that and possibly even walk the house prior to the day before, just to make sure the things the seller agreed to do have been taken care of. But the final walkthrough, you're going to verify all that. You want to make sure the house is still standing, you know, there haven't been any fires, no leaking pipes, basically nothing out of the ordinary beyond normal wear and tear. So if there's a scuff on the wall here or there, you know, from people moving out, you know, that's not something to complain about. But, you know, major damages, holes in the sheetrock, a light fixture missing that was there before, those kind of things. That's mainly why you want to do the final walkthrough. Okay, what happens if we hit a snag? So let me first of all say it happens. I alluded to this earlier with the appraisal, but that's a more common one, but there are other scenarios and situations can come up, many of which we wouldn't even be able to talk about here because each time it's different, let me tell you. So, but I will say some of the most common issues that come up include financing issues. So the lender can't close on time. This could be possibly something related to your approval, or it could be something on the lender's end. You know, and depending on what it is, we might need to delay, have an amendment. This usually is not a big deal, but it's something that if it happens, you need an agent who knows how to handle it and get the right paperwork in place. House doesn't appraise. Again, we talked about this. If that happens, you know, that's an opportunity then to go back and negotiate. The seller is not obligated to lower the price just because the house didn't appraise, but the buyer is not obligated to buy the house just because the house didn't appraise, especially if it means that they can't get the financing that they were guaranteed. So that's something that you need to know how to navigate and get through. And then sellers don't complete the repairs according to the contract. Now, to the best of my knowledge, I was trying to think of an example of this. I don't believe I've ever had this happen. Excuse me. I've had times when people felt like, oh, this wasn't as clean as I thought it would be. That's one of those where I say, look, don't worry about the cleanliness, seriously, because even if it looks, you know, like you could eat off the floors, you need to go and clean that for yourself anyway. So if it's a little dirtier than you maybe hoped for, look, I would say that's something you just need to plan to clean the house as soon as you move in. But other repairs, like something like, hey, this AC wasn't working. We asked them to replace it and it's still not working. Yeah, that's a problem. And that's something you need to know how to navigate when, well, if that occurs. I shouldn't say when that occurs, if that occurs. And in most cases, it doesn't. There are minor snags that come up, you know, almost in every transaction, but the major ones are the ones you get concerned about, because those are the ones that ultimately could affect closing on time and ultimately affect closing altogether. So, but whatever the situation, this is another reason you need a knowledgeable, competent, and experienced agent throughout this whole process. All right, closing time. Today's the day. Here are some things to keep in mind regarding closing. Bring your photo ID and cashier's check. You could also wire the money, but a lot of people choose to do a cashier's check. That's for your closing costs and down payment. This cannot be a personal check. Let me just be clear about that. So it can take an hour to sign sometimes, so plan accordingly. I recommend, if you can, take the day off. Don't think you're just going to do this on your lunch break. You might be able to just take the morning off or just take the afternoon off, but I generally encourage people, if you can, if you're able to, try to take the whole day off. Not because the signing is going to take all day, but just everything surrounding signing and then going to get water turned on. And then everyone likes to stop by the house when they're done too, you know, once they have the keys. So I just say plan accordingly. So you will receive your keys after the loan has funded. So you don't get the keys the second you sign the paperwork. If the seller has not signed already, they still need to sign. If they have signed already and both parties have signed, the paperwork still needs to go back to the lender for review before they officially fund the loan and ownership is transferred. So this is why I tell people, don't plan to move the day of closing. Don't plan to start working on the house the day of closing. I generally would say, I would even give 1 day of buffer. So if you're closing on Tuesday, I would say use Wednesday as a buffer day, and Thursday could be the day you start any kind of work that you were hoping to do or start moving. Mainly because, like, look, if you close late on Tuesday, it might not fund that day. Now it should fund first thing Wednesday morning, but if you were planning to start work first thing Wednesday morning, you can't do that because it hasn't actually funded yet and you don't have keys yet. So that's my recommendation, but it's case by case. And yeah, so yeah, funded means this is after all parties have signed and the lender has reviewed and authorized all documents. So congrats, you are now a homeowner. And there's my fun little meme People write congrats because they can't spell congratulations. It's true. All right, so call, text, or email with any questions. You take a screenshot of this. That's my phone number and email. That is the phone is really the best way to reach me. Call or text. If you call and it goes to voicemail, it's because I'm in a meeting or doing something like this. You know, you can always text me. I try to be pretty responsive. So anyway, you all passed. Good job. I would be happy to send you a first-time homebuyer certificate to show proof that you have passed this course. You can hang it on your wall once you buy your house. So if anybody wants one of those, you can email me. I'm actually totally serious. I have not created one of these, but I totally will. So let me know. All right. Thanks, guys.